My son invited me to his new house, but when I walked in, I realized it was the home I had lost years ago. Hi everyone! Before we get into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel's reach has been dropping a bit, and one of the best ways you can support us is by subscribing. It's quick, free, and helps us keep bringing you new and interesting stories. Your support means the world to us, and together, we can grow this channel. Thank you so much. Now let's get to today's story. I'm writing from a temporary account for obvious reasons, and I've changed some details to protect my anonymity. I never thought I'd see that doorknob again. The brass one with the little dent on the left side, shaped like a crescent moon. My son used to trace it with his finger when he was 4, standing on his tiptoes, asking me why the moon lived on our door. I told him it was magic, that it would always bring us home, no matter where we went. I was wrong about that. The house on Maple Street wasn't grand. It wasn't one of those places you see in magazines with perfectly staged furniture and windows that sparkle like diamonds. It was a modest 2-story with chipped blue paint and a porch that creaked in 3 specific spots. But it was ours. Every corner, every stain on the carpet, every pencil mark on the kitchen doorframe measuring Danny's height, it was all ours. I bought that house when Danny was 2 years old. His father had left us 6 months earlier, and I was drowning in a sea of fear and single-parent exhaustion. But I had scraped together enough for a down payment, working double shifts at the hospital and selling my mother's jewelry. The day we moved in, I carried Danny across the threshold and promised him that this would be his forever home, that he would always have a place to come back to, no matter what. I decorated every room with care, even though I had no money for an interior designer or expensive furniture. The living room had a second-hand couch. I reupholstered myself in deep green fabric. I hung curtains I sewed from clearance material, cream with tiny yellow flowers. Danny's room was painted sky blue because he was obsessed with airplanes. I found airplane decals at a garage sale and spent an entire Saturday arranging them on his walls while he sat on the floor, clapping and pointing at each one. The kitchen became my sanctuary. I painted the cabinets white and installed open shelving where I displayed the mismatched dishes my grandmother had given me. There was a small breakfast nook by the window where morning light poured in like honey. Danny and I would sit there every Sunday morning, eating pancakes shaped like animals. He always wanted elephants. I could never get the trunks quite right, but he never complained. We celebrated everything in that house. Every birthday, every lost tooth, every good report card. For Danny's 5th birthday, I threw a party with 12 kids crammed into our living room. I made a cake that looked like a fire truck, slightly lopsided, but covered in enough frosting that nobody noticed. Danny's face when he saw it, pure, unfiltered joy. That's what I remember most. Not the mess, not the exhaustion afterward, just his face. When he turned 7, we started a tradition. Every Christmas Eve, we'd sit on the porch steps wrapped in blankets, drinking hot chocolate, and looking for the first star. It didn't matter that the porch was freezing or that the steps were uncomfortable. Danny would lean against me, his small body warm and solid, and we'd make wishes. I always wished for the same thing, that I could keep him safe, keep us together, keep this home. The house held our tears too. It was there when Danny came home crying, because kids at school made fun of his second-hand shoes. I held him in the living room, both of us on that green couch, and I told him that material things didn't define his worth. It was there when I got the call that my mother had passed away. I sat in the kitchen for hours, staring at her dishes on the shelves, feeling the weight of being an orphan even at 32. The walls absorbed everything. Our laughter during movie nights when we'd build blanket forts. Our arguments when Danny became a teenager and slammed his bedroom door so hard the airplane decals would flutter. Our quiet moments of coexistence when he'd do homework at the kitchen table while I cooked dinner, both of us content in the comfortable silence of people who knew each other's rhythms. I worked so hard to keep that house. Every mortgage payment felt like a small victory. There were months when I had to choose between fixing the leaking roof or buying Danny new clothes for school. The roof always won because the house had to stand strong, It had to be there. But life has a way of crumbling even the strongest foundations. It started small. A reduction in hours at the hospital due to budget cuts. Then my car broke down, and the repair costs were catastrophic. I dipped into my savings, then into my emergency fund, then into money I didn't have. I took out a loan with terms I didn't fully understand, desperate and trusting the wrong person who promised it would be easy to repay. It wasn't easy. The interest rates were predatory. The payments ballooned. I picked up extra shifts, but it wasn't enough. I sold everything I could, my mother's remaining jewelry, furniture, anything of value. Danny was 15 then, old enough to understand that something was wrong, but young enough that I tried to shield him from the worst of it. I'll never forget the night I had to tell him. He was sitting at the kitchen table, doing calculus homework under the warm light of the pendant lamp I'd installed myself. I sat down across from him, and he looked up with those eyes, his father's eyes, dark and deep. And I watched the hope drain from them as I explained that we were losing the house. "What do you mean losing it?" he asked, his voice cracking. "I mean, we can't afford to keep it anymore, sweetheart. We have to move." He stood up so fast his chair fell backward. "No, Mom, no, this is our house. You promised." I had promised, and I had failed. The foreclosure process was brutal. I tried everything, talked to lawyers I couldn't afford, appealed to the bank, looked into programs for struggling homeowners. But I had made too many mistakes, signed the wrong papers, trusted the wrong people. The house that had taken everything I had to buy was being ripped away, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. We moved out on a Tuesday in October. The leaves were just starting to turn, splashes of red and gold against the gray sky. Danny helped me pack in silence. He was 16 now, almost a man. But I saw the child in him as he carefully took down the airplane decals in his room, trying not to tear them. He rolled each one up and put them in a shoebox, as if we could take the room with us. I walked through the empty house one last time. The rooms echoed without our furniture, without our life filling them. I stood in the kitchen and looked at the bare shelves where my grandmother's dishes had been. I went to the living room and saw the faint outline on the floor where the green couch had sat for 14 years. I climbed the stairs and stood in Danny's doorway, looking at the blue walls now marked with adhesive residue and faded spots where the sun had bleached around his posters. In the hallway, the pencil marks measuring his growth were still there on the doorframe. I had tried to erase them, thinking it would hurt less, but I couldn't do it. Those marks were proof that we had existed here, that he had grown here. From age 2 to 16, every inch documented. I ran my fingers over them and cried for the first time since the foreclosure notice came. The brass doorknob with the crescent moon dent was the last thing I touched. I wrapped my hand around it, feeling its familiar weight and coolness. "I'm sorry," I whispered to the house, to Danny, to myself. "I'm so sorry." We moved into a small apartment across town. 2 bedrooms, thin walls, a parking lot view. It was clean and safe, and I was grateful for it. But it wasn't home. It was a place to sleep, a place to exist. The walls were blank and would stay that way. I couldn't bring myself to hang pictures or paint or do anything that made it feel like we were settling in. Because settling in meant accepting that the house on Maple Street was truly gone. Danny changed after we lost the house. He became quieter, more withdrawn. He threw himself into school with an almost frightening intensity. He got a part-time job and insisted on contributing to rent, even though I told him that wasn't his responsibility. He was carrying guilt that wasn't his to carry, and I didn't know how to take it from him. The guilt I carried was enormous. It sat on my chest at night, making it hard to breathe. I had failed at the one thing I promised him, stability, a forever home. I replayed every financial decision, every mistake, every signature on documents I hadn't read carefully enough. If only I had been smarter, more careful, less trusting. If only I had worked harder, saved more, been better. I drove past the house once, about 6 months after we left. I don't know what I was hoping to see. Maybe that it was abandoned and decrepit, proof that it was nothing special. But it looked the same. The new owners had repainted it, a soft yellow instead of blue, and there was a new mailbox, but it was still standing there, still solid, still home to someone else's memories now. I never drove past again. Danny graduated high school with honors, full scholarship to a good university 3 hours away. I was proud and devastated in equal measure. Proud of his brilliance, his determination, his strength. Devastated that I couldn't give him the childhood home to come back to during breaks. He came back to the apartment, and I could see it in his eyes. This wasn't the same. This wasn't the place he wanted to return to. He graduated college in 4 years, got a job in the city, started building his own life. We talked on the phone every week. He visited when he could. But there was a distance between us that had nothing to do with miles. The loss of the house had created a canyon, and neither of us knew how to bridge it. We never talked about it directly. It was the ghost that haunted every conversation, every visit. 5 years after he graduated, Danny called me on a Sunday morning. I was sitting in my apartment, still the same apartment, still feeling temporary after a decade drinking coffee and reading. "Hey, Mom," he said, and there was something in his voice. Excitement? Nervousness? I couldn't place it. "Hey, sweetheart, how are you?" "I'm good, really good. Listen, I have something I want to show you. Can you come over next Saturday?" "Come over where?" "I got a new place. Well, a house, actually. I want you to see it." My heart did a complicated thing, part joy and part pain. A house. My son had a house. The thing I couldn't keep for him. He had achieved for himself. "Of course, honey. I'd love to see it. Just text me the address." "I will." "And Mom, come around 11 if you can. I want to have time to show you everything." There was something in his tone I couldn't identify. An undercurrent of emotion that went beyond simple excitement about a new house. The week dragged by. I found myself both eager and anxious about Saturday. I wanted to see what he had built for himself, the life he was creating. But I was also afraid. Afraid of feeling envious. Afraid of being reminded of my failures. Afraid of the gap between what I had wanted to give him and what he'd had to get for himself. Saturday morning, I dressed carefully. I wanted to look put together, like a mother who had her life figured out, even if that was far from the truth. I bought a houseplant as a gift, a small succulent in a ceramic pot, something low maintenance that would survive even if he forgot to water it sometimes. I put the address into my GPS and started driving. The route felt familiar, but I wasn't paying close attention, too nervous and lost in my thoughts. I rehearsed what I would say, how I would react with appropriate enthusiasm, how I would be happy for him without letting my own grief show through. The GPS directed me through streets I recognized, but couldn't quite place. Turn left here, turn right there, and then I was on Maple Street. My stomach dropped. No, he couldn't have. He wouldn't have. But the GPS kept directing me, and my hands were shaking on the steering wheel. House numbers climbing, getting closer to the one I had tried so hard to forget, but remembered, with painful clarity. And then I was there. Parked in front of 847 Maple Street. The house looked different. The yellow paint from years ago had been changed to a soft gray. There were new windows, new landscaping, a new roof. But it was the same house. The same porch with the steps that creaked. The same oak tree in the front yard where Danny used to climb. And the same front door with the brass doorknob. I sat in my car, unable to move. This had to be a mistake. Some kind of coincidence. Maybe Danny had rented an apartment in a house on the same street. Maybe I had the address wrong. But then the front door opened, and Danny stepped out onto the porch. He was smiling, but his eyes were wet. He had been crying or was about to cry. "Mom!" he called out. "Come on in." I got out of the car in a daze. My legs felt like they belonged to someone else. The succulent in its pot felt absurdly heavy in my hands. "Danny," I started. but I didn't know how to finish the sentence. Danny, what is this? Danny, how? Danny, why? He came down the porch steps. They still creaked in those same 3 spots. I noticed distantly and took my arm. Come inside, Mom, please. I let him guide me up the steps, across the porch, to the front door. He reached out and turned the brass doorknob with the crescent moon dent. The door swung open, and I stepped back into my past. The layout was the same, of course. The entryway opening into the living room on the left, the stairs straight ahead, the kitchen to the right. But it was decorated differently now. Modern furniture, neutral colors, tasteful art on the walls. This was Danny's house, not mine. Except, I walked slowly into the living room, and there, against the far wall, was the green couch. My green couch. The one I had reupholstered myself, the one I had sold when we moved. It had been cleaned and repaired, the fabric still that same deep green, but looking renewed. Danny, I whispered, keep looking, Mom. I walked into the kitchen, and my breath caught. The cabinets were still white. The open shelving was still there, and on those shelves, my grandmother's dishes. All of them. The mismatched plates and bowls I had sold, now arranged exactly as I had arranged them 15 years ago. The breakfast nook still had a table by the window. Different table, but the same spot where the morning light poured in like honey. I turned to Danny, tears streaming down my face now. How? Come upstairs, he said gently. I climbed the stairs, my hand on the railing, everything feeling like a dream. At the top, Danny guided me to the second bedroom. His old bedroom. He opened the door. The walls were still sky blue. And there, scattered across them in the same positions I remembered, were the airplane decals. The same ones he had carefully rolled up and saved in a shoebox 14 years ago. I stood in the doorway and sobbed. Great, heaving sobs that came from somewhere deep inside me, from the place where I had locked away all the grief and guilt and loss. Danny put his arms around me and held me while I cried. He was so much taller than me now, solid and strong, and he held me the way I had held him all those times when he was small and scared. When I could finally breathe again, I pulled back and looked at him. Tell me, I said. Tell me everything. We went back downstairs and sat in the kitchen, the breakfast nook. He made coffee. He remembered that I liked it with just a little cream, and we sat across from each other, the morning light pouring in just like it used to. I bought the house 2 years ago, Danny said. I've been working on it ever since, getting it ready. 2 years? But why didn't you tell me? Because I needed it to be perfect first, and I needed to be sure I could do it, that I wouldn't lose it again. But how did you even— the cost, Danny? Houses are expensive, and this one— I know. I've been saving since I got my first job. Every bonus, every raise, I put it away. I lived in a tiny studio apartment with 3 roommates because I didn't care about my living situation. I cared about this. He wrapped his hands around his coffee mug, and I noticed they were shaking slightly. When I found out the house was going on the market 2 years ago, I knew I had to try. I had enough for a down payment, barely. I got a mortgage, a big one. It scared me, Mom. It still scares me sometimes. But I had to do it. Why? I asked, even though part of me knew. Why this house? He looked up at me, and his eyes were exactly like they had been when he was 15, and I told him we were losing our home. Because you promised me it would be my forever home. Because you kept that promise for as long as you could, longer than you should have. You destroyed yourself trying to keep it for me, and I watched you carry that guilt every day for 14 years. Danny. No, let me finish. I watched you shrink, Mom. You stopped decorating. You stopped making homes out of places. You lived like you were in a waiting room, like life was something that had already passed you by. And I knew it was because of this house, because you thought you failed me. The tears were streaming down both our faces now. But you didn't fail me. You taught me what home meant. You showed me that it's not the building, it's the love inside it. Its pancakes shaped like elephants, and Christmas Eve on cold porch steps, and marks on a doorframe measuring a childhood. You gave me all of that, and then you blamed yourself for losing the container it came in. I did fail you, I said, my voice breaking. I promised. You promised me a forever home, and you gave me one. You gave me you. You were the home, Mom. You still are. I couldn't speak. The weight I had carried for 14 years was pressing down on me so hard I thought I might collapse. But I also understood why the house mattered, Danny continued. It was proof. Proof that you were a good mother, that you had given me stability, that you had built something solid. When we lost it, you lost that proof. So I decided to get it back for you. Danny, you shouldn't have spent all that money, taken on that much debt, just for you? Mom, there's nothing I wouldn't do for you. Nothing. Do you understand that? He reached across the table and took my hands. I spent 2 years tracking down everything I could find from our old house. The couch, the dishes, everything. Some of it I found at estate sales and thrift stores. Some of it I had to pay people to look for. The airplane decals, I kept those in a box in every place I lived. I always knew I'd put them back up someday. The pencil marks, I said suddenly, on the hallway doorframe. Still there. Come on, I'll show you. We went to the hallway, and there they were. Every mark I had made measuring his growth from age 2 to 16. Danny had built his life around them, had bought a house, and planned a renovation, all while making sure these pencil marks stayed intact. The new owners painted over them once, Danny said quietly. When I bought the house, I spent an entire day carefully removing the paint to uncover them. Some of them were faint, but they're all still there, every inch of me growing up. I traced them with my finger like I had done the day we left, but this time I wasn't saying goodbye. There's one more thing, Danny said. He pulled out a marker and held it out to me. We need to add some new marks. New marks? Yeah, it's been 14 years. I'm 30 now. I'm taller than I was at 16. And there in the hallway of the house we lost and found again, I measured my 30-year-old son against the doorframe and made a new mark. The first mark in our second chance. We spent the rest of the day going through the house together. Danny showed me every repair he had made, every choice he had agonized over. He had kept the bones of the house the same, but had updated and improved everything. New plumbing, new electrical, new insulation. The house was better than it had been, stronger, more solid. I wanted to make sure we'd never lose it again, he explained. Everything is built to last now. In the late afternoon, we sat on the porch steps, wrapped in blankets, even though it wasn't that cold. Old habits. We drank hot chocolate. Danny had bought the same brand I used to make, and looked at the sky. So what happens now? I asked. Is this your house? Are you going to live here? Danny was quiet for a moment. I bought it for both of us, Mom. For you. I want you to live here. This is your home. I was just trying to get it back for you. My chest tightened. Danny, I can't let you do that. This is your house. You worked for it. We both worked for it. You worked for 16 years, and I worked for 12. It's ours. Both of ours. But you need your own space, your own life. You can't give up everything for... I have an apartment in the city near my work, he interrupted. I'll stay there during the week. But this place, Mom, this is home. I want to know you're here. I want to come back here for Sunday pancakes and Christmas Eve on the porch. I want to bring my future family here someday and show them where I grew up. I want you to finally stop living like you're in a waiting room and actually live again. I looked at my son, this man who had taken the broken pieces of our past and put them back together with such care and love, who had spent years and a small fortune to give me back something I thought was lost forever. I don't deserve this, I whispered. That's the thing about love, Mom. It's not about deserving. It's about choosing, every day, to be there for each other. You chose me every single day, even when it was hard, even when it cost you everything. Now I'm choosing you. We sat there as the sun started to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The oak tree in the front yard rustled in the breeze, the same sound I remembered from countless evenings. The porch creaked beneath us. Everything was familiar and new at the same time. "There's something I need to tell you," Danny said after a while. His voice was different now, more serious. My stomach clenched. Here it was, the catch, the condition, the thing that would make this beautiful gift come with strings attached. "What is it?" "The mortgage on this place is significant. I can afford it with my salary, but it's tight. And I need you to know that I'm okay with that. I'm not struggling. I'm not drowning like you were. I went into this with my eyes open, with financial advisors and lawyers, and everything done right. But it means I'm not rich. I'm not living some luxurious lifestyle. My apartment in the city is tiny. I drive an old car. I eat a lot of ramen." He turned to look at me, and his expression was earnest. "I need you to be okay with that. I need you to not feel guilty that I spent this money. Because if you're going to live here and feel guilty every day, then I failed. The whole point was to give you back your home and your peace. So I need you to accept this gift without guilt. Can you do that?" Could I? Could I let go of the guilt that had been my constant companion for 14 years? Could I accept that my son had succeeded where I had failed, and that his success didn't diminish me, but instead reflected the love between us? "I'll try," I said. "I can't promise the guilt will disappear overnight. But I'll try, Danny. For you, I'll try." He smiled, and it was like the sun had come out, even though it was setting. "That's all I ask." We stayed on the porch until it got dark. Danny told me about his plans for the house, about the garden he wanted to plant in the backyard, about how he had already measured the living room to make sure a Christmas tree would fit in the corner. We talked about holidays and future Sunday pancakes, and all the memories we would make in this space that held so many already. When it was time for me to leave to go back to the apartment one last time, before I started the process of moving home, Danny walked me to my car. "The doorknob," I said suddenly. "The brass one with the crescent moon dent. Did you—" "Never changed it," Danny said. "It still has the magic, Mom. It brought us home, just like you said it would. It just took longer than we expected." I hugged him there in the driveway, under the streetlight, in front of the house that had been lost and found. I held him tight, my boy, my man, my son, who had moved heaven and earth to give me back a piece of myself I thought was gone forever. "Thank you," I whispered into his shoulder. "Thank you for bringing us home." A month later, I moved back into 847 Maple Street. I brought the few things I had kept from our old life photos, Danny's baby blanket, a few books, but mostly I moved into a house that was already full of us, full of memory and love and second chances. I hung new curtains in the living room, cream with tiny yellow flowers. I put fresh flowers on the kitchen table every week. I made pancakes shaped like elephants on Sunday mornings, and Danny came home from the city to eat them with me. Slowly, the guilt began to fade. Not all at once, not without setbacks. There were nights when I lay in bed in my old bedroom and thought about the years of debt Danny would be paying, the sacrifices he was making. But then morning would come, and the light would pour into the kitchen like honey, and I would remember what he told me about love being a choice. He chose me, and I had to choose to accept that gift with grace. On our first Christmas Eve back in the house, Danny and I sat on the porch steps wrapped in blankets, drinking hot chocolate. The steps creaked in those same 3 spots. The oak tree rustled in the winter wind. Everything was exactly as it had been and completely different. "Make a wish, Mom," Danny said, looking up at the night sky. I closed my eyes and thought about what I wanted. For so many years, my wish had been the same, to keep us safe, to keep us together, to keep this home. I had thought I failed at that wish. But sitting there on the porch with my son, in the house that had been lost and found, I realized my wish had come true. It just hadn't happened the way I expected. We had been safe, even when we were scared. We had stayed together, even when everything else fell apart. And home had never really been lost, because we carried it with us in every choice we made, every sacrifice, every moment of love. "What did you wish for?" Danny asked. I opened my eyes and looked at him. That I could let go of the past and just be here, now, with you. "That's a good wish," he said. "What about you? What did you wish for?" He was quiet for a moment, looking up at the stars. "That you'd finally believe you were a good mother. That you'd stop punishing yourself for doing everything you could. That you'd be happy." My eyes filled with tears, but they were different tears than the ones I had cried for 14 years. These were tears of release, of letting go, of coming home to myself. "I'm getting there," I said. "I'm getting there." We sat in comfortable silence, looking at the stars. The front door with its brass doorknob and crescent moon dent stood open behind us, warm light spilling out into the cold night. An invitation, a promise, a home. And for the first time in 14 years, I felt the weight lift from my chest. The guilt that had been crushing me began to dissolve, replaced by something else. Gratitude, hope, peace. Danny reached over and took my hand, and we sat there together. Two people who had lost and found each other, who had learned that home isn't a place you keep, but a place that keeps you, no matter how far you wander or how lost you become. The house on Maple Street stands strong now, stronger than it ever was. Its walls hold new memories layered over old ones. Its rooms echo with laughter again. Its doors stay open for everyone who needs refuge, for everyone who needs reminding that you can go home again. Because sometimes love builds a bridge over time and loss. Sometimes the things we grieve come back to us transformed. Sometimes the promises we make to our children are kept by the children themselves, in ways we never could have imagined. And sometimes, when you turn a brass doorknob with a crescent moon dent, it really is magic. It really does bring you home. Just like I told him, all those years ago, when he was 4 years old and stood on his tiptoes, tracing that dent with his small finger. I was right about that after all.